Greetings, everyone. Once again, is brother Mota Mwanidi sharing the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula, the only teacher, the messenger, the second in the mysteries, in the hidden revelations of the word of Loba. We give thanks to Loba, the only creator of heaven and earth, for his great, glorious, and formidable, and that he lives inexplicably out of all realities. So today, the message I'm going to translate is teachings that was given by Zulula. And it was given to him by the permission of Loba, the only and unique creator, by his grace, by his all divine power. So today we shall enter into the spheres of forbidden knowledge. So here we're going to talk about the territory name known in the current days as Cameroon in Central Africa. Many people lack understanding of history because many self-proclaimed historian teachers have spoken regarding the story of Africa, but these are people without substance, without spiritual substance. Those are people who are mentally challenged. So we are here to correct these fools. Here we're going to talk about the true name of Cameroon. So as you know, many countries the names of countries, it comes from events that happen. That's how a country, a geographic place has a name. It can be from something that happened, an event, or it can be also regarding a name of someone. So someone will give his name to a country. And sometimes it's also regarding animals. So here we're gonna talk about geography, and for that to understand regarding the names, regarding the story, the geographic, we have to understand also the origin. We have to master science. So we're going to go in the mysteries of higher knowledge. So when you go, for example, regarding the North America and Canada, the current name of Canada, where does it come from? For example, Canada, it comes from what those who are called the indigenous, so they call them, when they first arrived, they called them Indians, but right now they call them indigenous, the First Nations, and so on, autochthones. It's from them that the name Canada comes from, and it means a large village. That's what Canada means. So many countries have had different names before. Even China, the country known as China today, had many different names before. So for that, we shall talk about the origin. We have to go to the source, the beginning. So before discussing the name of a country, we must first discuss its location, where it is, what part of the world that country is located. So for this, we will go into Bibèl. So this is going to be in Bibèl, Kálat'a, the only authentic Bible. Bibèl, origin, chapter 1, verse 2. So here we're going to talk about ancestral Africa. Bibèl, origin is where everything began. Because even the continent named Africa is called the cradle of humanity, because that's where everything began. So take note that we are going to go back in time, even before the territory we call Cameroon existed. No country existed at that time. In this, we'll go back in time, like I've mentioned, in Bibè, which is in the beginning. He says this. So, for those who don't know regarding Bibèl, Kálat'a, it's the true scriptures, the text of the patriarch, the matriarch, the true prophets, their names, places of birth, their true names with their true meanings, what really happened, that's in Bibèl. That's the story that they've tried to falsify, and in the current Bibles, they've changed the places of birth, the names, and even the colors of the patriarch and matriarch. So, in this Bible, it tells the true story of the world from the very creation of the multiverses. So, the everything of the why, the how, where, it is explained in Bibèl, the only authentic Bible. And here in the message, I'm going to translate in English. So in Bibè, chapter 1, verse 2. So Origin, chapter 1, verse 2. He says, Massima Wase, in bracket, planet Earth. Yes, that's the true name of our planet, planet Earth. It's Massima Wase. Massima Wase, planet Earth, was a mass of primordial fluid water without physical life and was suspended in the immensity of the visible universe. Because before talking about the territory now known as the Cameroon or even the continent, we have to know, because the continent known as Africa is on Earth. So here we go to the origin even of that Earth, the planet Massima Wase. And here you're told at the origin that Massima Wase, planet Earth, was a mass of primordial fluid water. So it was water, primordial, primitive water. Fluid water without physical life, and was suspended in the immensity of the visible universe. So this is before the territory will even materialize. So first we locate planet Earth, a large globe, ball, full of energy itself. So planet Earth, Massima Wase, was made of energy. So it was Massima Wase, the primordial water in the beginning. And then when we go to Bibè chapter 1, verse 9, you're told, verse 9 to 10, you're told, then the manifestation of the will of Loba, so Loba is the only and unique creator, you're told here, then the manifestation of the will of Loba commanded that the water which are below the heavens gather a line in one place, so that the Muniele, in bracket, continent, appears under the form of circle in the center of the waters, and solidly retained by the semi-spiritual, semi-astral, and semi-visible base. And it was so. So Here you're told that at the beginning, basically the earth, it was water, primitive water, consists of energy and so on. And that's before the continent was materialized. And you're told here in Mutaisedi chapter 1 verse 9, then the manifestation of the will of Loba commanded that the waters which are below the heavens gather, align in one place, so that the Muniele continent, so that's the true name of the continent. He says here the Muniele, because it's one continent. That's before what is known as the continental drift, or the drift of the fragment of the continent. So the continent appear, but where does it appear? Appear under the form of a circle. So that continent that appeared, it was in the form of a circle in the center of the waters. So it was at the center of the waters of the water which are below the heavens. They gathered, so it was one block, one continent in the middle of the water that appeared. So it was Massima Wase, the planet Earth, which means Earth, planet Earth, and it was water. And when you go inside, that's when the dry land will eventually appear. So that continent, that block, rocks, solid, the land, the soil. And that what is called the Muniele continent. And then, as we continue in verse 10, you're told, and Loba, by the manifestation of his will, named Muniele continent. So Muniele means the continent. So Loba, by the manifestation of his will, named the Muniele continent, Wase, earth, in bracket, solid. So, because that continent, that land, now had to be named. And it was named by Loba, by the manifestation of his will. So the continent was called Wase. So the true name of the continent is not Africa, it's Wase. Wase. Which means the earth, also the land, so earth. And you're told here, earth solid. And he named the cluster of waters Bibè, in bracket, ocean. And the manifestation of the will of Loba considered that it was pleasant. So here you have to understand this is before all the other languages. This is before Hebrew, Greek, Kikongo, French, English, all those languages. This was here when it says Muniele, it's in the original language. It's in Duálá, ancient Duálá. So now We will go in Bibèl chapter 2, verse 8. Which says, so Bibèl, Origin chapter 2, verse 8. Then, by the manifestation of his will, Loba brought out of the spiritual world a great, beautiful and mysterious Mondama Munyenge, in bracket, Garden of Eden, which became semi-astral and semi-physical, and planted it in the middle of the continent of Eden, Wasimutonga, Central Africa. There, So here I'll stop in the comma. So here you're told that at a certain point in history, way before, at the beginning, when Masima Wase, the planet Earth, was created, it was water. And then, within it, the continent appeared at the center. That's what we call the Muniele, the continent. And you're told, at the very center of the continent, listen carefully, at the very center of the continent, where, because within the continent there was already grass, greenery was growing and so on, it becomes like a garden. So that's what you're told of the continent of Eden, because it was a garden. So it was the Muniele, the continent, which was basically all of Africa at that time was the garden. Basically was Eden, Muniele. It was a place of delight. And now, in the center of that garden, in the center of that Muniele, that continent, you're told, then by the manifestation of his will, Loba brought out of the spiritual world a great and beautiful, beautiful and mysterious Mondama Munyenge, Garden of Eden. So from the spiritual realm, which became semi-astral and semi-physical, and planted it in the middle of the continent of Eden, Wasimutonga. So at the center, there was now the Garden of Eden. Basically, the capital of the continent, which will symbolize the Holy of Holies. So that's what you call the Garden of Eden, which is Manda Ma Munyenge. And we're going to locate the place where the Garden of Eden was located. Why? Because It will depend on where the entity of the great order of things they will manifest. Because when an entity manifests himself in the visible realm, it's not just going to appear anywhere. So it will depend on where he's going to position himself. So, because depending on where he's going to position himself, there could be left, right, there will be the center, there will be the front, and there will be behind. So when the entity is sent, when the entity comes, or when a higher spirit manifests himself in the visible world, if, let's say, that entity comes in what we call Central Africa, in the original language, it's Wase Mutonga. So he will come to what we call Wase Mutonga, which we call represent Central Africa. And it is at the center, at the center of Africa, of the Muniele, through name Wase, that was placed the Garden of Eden. So Bibotesi chapter 2, verse 8. Then by the manifestation of his will, Loba brought out of the spiritual world a great, beautiful and mysterious Mondama Munyenge Garden of Eden, which became semi-astral, semi-physical, and planted it in the middle of the continent of Eden. Wase Mutonga, Central Africa. There, and now we're going to locate exactly where. It says, at the literal region, in brackets Sawa, of the temporal sensitivity extracted from the universal anteriority of time, semicolon, and he put there the same motto which he had formed for Longela Bundea, eternal life. So you're told here that that continent, that Garden of Eden, was planted in the middle of the continent. There, at the littoral region, littoral, that means the coastal region. Coastal. Now, some are going to say, well, there are many countries, coastal countries, currently in Africa. But here we're talking about the beginning, the origin. That's why he says, at the littoral region, in bracket, Sawa. Sawa. So, Duálá. And that territory is now known as Cameroon. For those of you who don't know, the territory now known as Cameroon was before way larger than the maps that they currently show. It means, because even on the ancient maps, Ethiopia was in Central Africa. Because Ethiopia, a great part of Ethiopia, Gabon, Congo, Angola, in short, all the countries around, nearby, were part of that territory. So, in short, all the surrounding countries, so you have Chad, southern part of Nigeria, were contained within that vast territory that is present-day Cameroon. In what is now called Duálá, in the coastal territory of Duálá, in the very heart, center of Ouassé, is where the Garden of Eden was located, was placed. And before the Garden of Eden was established, it was not that territory, that country, or locations. It wasn't called Cameroon. It wasn't called Tombouanébila. It was not called or Longanapi. That territory was first originally called Ouassé. All that land was called Ouassé. Now, depending on where you would go, if you go north, then you will say, I'm going to north. So it's called Ouassé Pongo. So North Africa. If you go west, you'll say, I'm going to Bengue, Ouassé Bengue. So West Africa. East would be called Ouassé Djedou, East Africa. Then you have Ouassé Moutonga, Central Africa. And if you go south, you say it was called originally Austral Ouassé. Now they call it South Africa, but that's not the true name. It was Austral Ouassé. Ouassé Austral. Which is in the original language Ouassé Epassi Mikondo. Ouassé Epassi Mikondo. And then when you translate, it is Austral Ouassé, or Africa. So, some people who lack intelligence without any knowledge will say no. Before it was called this or that, no. They will try to give you other names. It's not the names that you imagine or that you have been told. Now, we're going to give you the real name of Cameroon. And that name has never changed. From the beginning, that name has always existed. So, I'll read again in Bibèl chapter 2, verse 8. It says, Then by the manifestation of his will, Loba brought out of the spiritual world a great, beautiful, and mysterious Mandama Munyenge, Garden of Eden, which became semi-astral and semi-physical, and planted it in the middle of the continent of Eden, Wasimutonga, Central Africa, there at the literal region, Sawa, of the temporal sensitivity, extracted from the universal interiority of time, and he put there the same Moto which he had formed for Longela Buddha. So the same man, Moto, the first man who was created the first, he was black. And he spoke ancient Duálá. Moto, the first man, was a Sawa. Even the ancient Egyptians were Sawa. So that man, that first man, he wasn't Cameroonian, because the word Cameroon did not yet exist. But the word Sawa has always existed when the world was founded. Because he, the first man, was a coastal person. So Sawa, that's what it means. Of the coast. Littoral. Literal. And like I've said, that man, his language was ancient Duálá. And we're going to prove that to you. So at that time, the Kikongo, Swahili, Hebrew, Mandarin, all those languages did not yet exist. When we go in origin, chapter, I'm going to go to origin, chapter 14, verse 1, to explain how it all works. He says this. So Bibèl, origin, chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in the sequel of time that some uninitiated kings of Wase Jedu, East Africa, Wase Epasi Mikondo, Austral Africa, of Wase Bengue, West Africa, of Wase Pongo, North Africa, and Wasimutonga, Central Africa, and their acolyte, who, having been initiated into the occult world, fought an intense mystical battle. So here you're told how those territories, those regions were named, like I've mentioned. So Wase Jedu is East Africa, Wase Basimi Kondo is Austral Africa, which will say, people will say Southern Africa or South Africa, but true name is Austral Africa. Wase Pongo is North Africa, Wase Bengue, West Africa, Wase Mutonga, Central Africa. Because all those names were in ancient Duálá, since the first man was Sawa Duálá. So all the names, it was like that in the original language. We're going to take an example, for example, regarding Cameroon and Nigeria, regarding the place named Bakassi, where those who know a little bit, there was a dispute between Cameroon and Nigeria about that territory, and they were talking about oil. And people say Bakassi. However, we don't say Bakassi, but Bakassi, which means those who have welcomed. And now the business center of in Duálá, well, Duálá is the business center, but there's a central area in a city within Duálá called Aqua. Many people know the city of Aqua. So Aqua, it's pronounced aqua, and it means to beg, to plead. And for example, when people go to what we call, when you cross, because in Cameroon there's a bridge called the Vori Bridge. To go, people say they go, for example, to Bonaberi, but it's not Bonaberi, it's Bonabedi, which means those of. Bona, that's what it means. Those of. It's regarding a family. Bonabedi. People will say Bonamusadi. So this is some names regarding some places in what is called Cameroon, different regions. And in some of the regions, places will be called Bona Musadi. Musadi means little ones. Bona means the little ones. Basically, it's a family. So it means basically the family of Musadi, the little ones of Musadi. And you also have Bonantale and many other names that people will pronounce without knowing. But here we're not going to cite all those names, but that was to simply tell you that the first man was Sawa Duálá, and he spoke ancient Duálá, the original language. And in ancestral Africa, long before we called that territory Cameroon. long before even the name Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, and so on. All those names did not yet exist. And some will tell the only name that have survived is Ethiopia. But that's not true, because Ethiopia is a translation. The true name of Ethiopia is Mundo, because the ancient Ethiopians themselves, the Ethiopians are Sawa. The Egyptians also are Sawa, the ancient Egyptians. But they were not called Egyptians. They were called Jenne. And we're going to demonstrate, prove that later on. So here we'll continue in Bibèl, chapter 11, verse 16. It says, from the Sawa language, in bracket, ancient Duálá, which is the original language, Mukaisedi, the entity, extirpated a fragment of its essence in order to manifest new languages. Extirpated a fragment of its essence, an essence of the original language, the Duálá language, from the Sawa language, ancient Duálá, which is the original language. Mukaisedi extirpated a fragment of its essence in order to manifest new languages. Others, some are going to try to argue, some are going to say the English language is the most widespread. All that is your point of view. But Duálá, the ancient language, ancient Duálá, existed way before English. You can look it up. The Duálá language existed before the English language, before even Hebrew, Greek, all those languages. And you're told here that the entity extirpated a fragment of its essence in order to manifest new languages. And you'll see the proof that the Duálá language is the original language. Because in Duálá, to say small spoon, you say teaspoon. And in English, you also say teaspoon. Kitchen in Duálá is kitchen. Kitchen. In English, kitchen. I'm going to read some here. A mattress in English is in Duálá is matrasi. King or queen in English, in Duálá, ancient Duálá, is kinye. Milk in English, in Duálá you have miliki. You have even soap in English, in Duálá is soapy. So, because you're told in Bibèl, chapter 11, verse 16, from the Sawa language, ancient Duálá, which is the original language, Mukaisedi, the entity, extirpated a fragment of his essence in order to manifest new languages. So all the new language that you see that have appeared came after from an essence of the ancient Duálá language in order to manifest the other languages. And even ancient Egyptian, and we're going to show you here. But before we shall go, we're going to go in Psalm chapter 87, verse 4. So Psalm, true name is myango. Psalm 87, verse 4, it says, Jene, Egypt. And so that's the true name of Egypt is Jene, Egypt. And Jambela Mundi, in bracket Babylon. Mundo, in bracket Ethiopia. Banamboa, in bracket Philistine, are all brothers of race, and were born in Wase, being issued from the Sawa lineage. So all those Jene, Jambela Mundi, Mundo, Banamboa. So Egypt, Babylon, Ethiopia, the Philistine, all come from the Sawa lineage. And we're going to prove once again regarding the language, the ancient Egyptian. In ancient Egyptian, to say the sacred city, it's Komb Umbo. In ancient Duálá is Ekombo. In ancient Egyptian, to say mother or mom, it's Mut. In Duálá, it's Muto. To say mourning, to mourn, and when they cut their hair, it's Kums. In Duálá is Mukusa, widow, whose hair is customary to cut. In ancient Egyptian, to say beef or bull is Neka. In ancient Duálá is Nyaka. In ancient Egyptian, to say fruit with seed, so sour soap, it's Sab. And in Duálá is Saba. So show another language which is as close related as to the ancient Egyptian as the ancient Duálá. And Egypt, ancient Egyptian, comes from the ancient Egyptians were Sawa, Duálá. And that language, ancient Egyptian, come from the Sawa language. You have even here, in ancient Egyptian, to say the pain is Senu, Sesenu. In Duálá is Sese. To say the rising sun, they say in ancient Egyptian, Atum, or the sun god Ra, Atum, or Atum Ra. In ancient Egyptian, in ancient Duálá, to say the rising sun is Etume. You see, Etume in Duálá, in ancient Egypt, Etume in Duálá, in ancient Egyptian, it's Atum, or Atum Ra. To say something that is carbonized, so charred, we say Kamse in ancient Duálá, and in ancient Egyptian, it says it is Kam, which means black. Because when you carbonize something charred, it's black. To say the day, we also say in Duálá, Su. And ancient Egypt is Su. In Duálá, to say this one. Yeah, Nyaka, yeah, it's regarding the boa. And so in ancient Duálá, to say servant is bakom in ancient Egyptian. So in Duálá is bakom, in ancient Egyptian is baku. Baku. So a servant. So this is to show you the relation, how the ancient Egyptian language is close to ancient Duálá, because ancient Egyptian comes from the original language as well, the ancient Duálá, because it's at the base. Ancient Duálá is at the base for all other language that came in after. So Duálá is the first language. And when the explorers came to the territory now known as Cameroon, because first the explorers would come to explore, to look, and then the missionaries will follow, and then they will work together, the missionaries and the explorers. And when they came, some will think that that country, that land, was named Cameroon. It was not named Cameroon. There are people who think that that place was called Cameroon. Cameroon means shrimp river. Because before people used to say it means crab river, or the road crab river, but it means shrimp river. It does not mean anything else. Some are gonna try to come up with some explanation, cut it in two, separate some words of Cameroon to try to explain, no, it means this, it means that. Some are gonna claim that it means regarding the name of the patriarch known as Aaron. But his true name of Aaron is Mwenen. But that land existed before are wrong. There were patriarchs that lived before him, so that name could not have been used. If you want to know, when the name Cameroon was given, it happened in Duálá, on the coast. It was in Vouri, so the river. It was at the Vouri River. At the Vouri River. The true name of Cameroon hasn't, from the beginning, has not changed. Even before the colonizers arrived, the missionaries, all those, Cameroon, that territory had different names. But it was called also Tombouanébila at a period, or Nassim, Longanapi, and so forth. But its true name is Duálá. Duálá. Since Duálá was the capital, it was there. But then the capital was moved later to Yaoundé. But Duálá still remains. It's the only name since the creation of the world where the name has been spoken. We say the coastal region of Duálá. So Duálá is still there. That name still exists. Whether you like it or not, so when you read the scriptures, the text, the current Bibles, they tell you supposedly, oh no, it's the story of the Israelites, and so on. But those texts, those scriptures, the patriarch, the matriarch, the prophet, is a story of a people. And if you want to know, it's the story of the Sawa people, the Duálá. So the patriarch, the matriarch, the apostles, they were all Sawa, Duálá. Because, yes, it's the story of black people, but we know there are many nations. There's many black people, different tribes, and so on. But when you read the authentic Bible, from the first man, who is called Moto, who they called Adam in their Bible, but the true name is Moto. All the prophets who came, patriarch, apostles, were Sawa, Duálá. And whether it was regarding the Egyptians, for example, Agar, she was Sawa, because the Egyptians were also Sawa. You're told regarding, in the scriptures, in the text, the Philistines, they were Sawa. Even the story regarding if David, Abraham, Solomon, Jacob, the 13 tribes of Israel, they were all Sawa, Duálá. So when you read the Bible, you're immersing yourself in the story of the Duálá people. A people from the beginning, from the origin. Who spread out and populated Wasi, known as Africa. So I repeat, the real name of Cameroon is Duálá. Ask yourself this: when you're in France or in Canada and you take, for example, the plane to travel to go to Cameroon, what does he say? So he says Duálá International Airport, Cameroon. So why do they specify Duálá? Why does the plane has to stop at Duálá? So the first man was Duálá, Sawa. The ancient Duálá is the original language. That first man had children, and so he had a lineage, he had many descendants. And they were all Sawa Duálá. But then when the multiplication of languages appeared, when in Bibèl, origin 11, when other language manifested, it will symbolize different tribes. That are still descended from the Duálá. And many historians also have confirmed that at a certain point in history of the present day Cameroon, that it was Duálá, it was the Duálá language that was spoken in that territory. So all the patriarchal story you're reading is the story of the Sawa. It's not a story of another people. Because the names, their names are written in Sawa, in Duálá. They have their essence, their meaning in the original language in Duálá. Even the patriarch Job. Job is not his true name. His true name is Temusia. Isaiah, his true name is Wonja. All the names, you say David, his name is Tondo. So from the beginning to the end, the names are in Duálá. So ask yourself, even regarding the history of what is called Cameroon, when there been the Germanic Duálá Treaty, who did they talk to when the German arrived in that territory? Who did they deal with? With the Duálá chiefs. Now some people are going to say no, they sold out, but that's just Mongols telling stories, people who have no knowledge. So you see, when you don't know the story, the history, stay calm. The real name of present-day Cameroon is Duálá. And our real name is Mwenen. So that was the message. All glory be to Loba, the only and unique creator.